Welcome back to a brand new video. My name is Anson, and in this video you're going to learn how to create your own command handler. So specifically for slash commands. So what exactly is a command handler? Well, if you've seen my Discord.js version 14 tutorials with slash commands specifically, you would have seen that we would have had to handle all of our slash command logic inside the interaction create event. And that basically meant that checking which command it is that we are executing, handling getting the options, everything would have happened inside a bunch of if-else cases or switch cases, right? And you can start to realize that that is not really a good way to handle everything, because you'll just end up with a large file of code, and it's going to be really hard to individually, test everything, and it's going to end up looking like spaghetti code, and it's not modular, and it becomes problematic with your code base, right? Especially if you have a large project. And the whole purpose of what a command handler is supposed to do is it's supposed to basically take all of your commands from, its own custom file that you have on your project directory. And it's supposed to take that and it's going to save it into memory. And then whenever you execute the command, it's going to take the contents of that file. So typically it's a function that you want to execute, and it's going to execute that function. Okay, I know all of this sounds really weird right now, but most people who have used Discord.js before are aware of what a command handler is. But for those who are kind of like brand new to this concept, right? It's basically just a way for you to create modular commands, because some of you might wonder, well, how do I, write modular code with my Discord bot with slash commands? Because, I'm writing everything inside an if-else case and it works, but it doesn't look pretty. And that is the whole goal and purpose of having a command handler, to make sure that you can write modular code for your commands and write reusable code as well. And it also helps with writing unit tests. It makes it a lot easier to test your code. So enough talking, let's get right into the tutorial. We're going to do everything from scratch using JavaScript. I will make a separate follow-up video on how to do everything in TypeScript, so don't worry. So I'm going to first create a directory, and I'll just call this, let's call this application command handler Discord. I'm going to cd into this directory, and what I'll do is I'm going to run npm init-y so I can get the package.json file, and I'm going to install all of my dependencies that I need. So I will need discord.js, I'll need @discord.js/rest, and one more dependency that I will need is .env for environment variables. So like I said, we're doing everything from scratch. I don't want to leave anything out. So let's install .env. So this is going to allow us to store our bot token, application ID, guild ID, any, secret variables that we need. We'll store it inside a .env file, and then our code is going to load all those variables into memory. So let's open up Visual Studio Code. And let's move this over here. Whoops. Okay. Let's create a new folder, call it source, and let's create an index.js file. Okay. Before we continue, let's also create a new file called .env. And I'm just going to go ahead and paste in 3 variables. So that's going to be the bot_token variable. So this is just going to be your bot token. App ID, that is your application's ID. Okay. You can grab all of this stuff from the developer portal. And the guild ID, so that's just going to be the ID of my test guild that I'm using to test my my commands. So I'm going to close this out, and I'm going to go inside my index.js file. And what I'm going to do is I'm first going to import the .env dependency, and we're going to call the config function from that package. That will take care of loading all of our environment variables immediately. That's the first thing you always want to do. And I do want to mention that we are going to be using common.js. The reason, and what that means is we're going to basically be using the require function to import all of our dependencies, and we will need to use modular exports. Now, I know a lot of people don't really like to use that because it is really old, but unfortunately, I did try to do this using ES modules, and I ran into a lot of issues when I was working with the file system API. So that's why we're just going to use require. But don't worry, in the TypeScript tutorial, we will be using, import, export, and all that stuff. So you don't have to worry about that. But just for JavaScript, we will be using common.js for everything. Okay. So we'll go ahead and import .env, and we'll call the config function. So this will load all of your environment variables into the global process.env object, and you can reference it like this in your application. So bot underscore token, which is the same exact name as my variable over here. Okay. Before we do anything else, let's just import the Discord.js library, but we're going to import the client class like that. Okay. We'll also import a couple other stuff too. I'll import the routes constant. This will allow us to get the actual routes that we need to call to register our slash commands to the Discord API. So let's first create an instance of the client. And for intents, I'll just leave this as an empty array for now. We won't really need any intents. We won't really need, like, guilds or messages. We don't need that right now. I will set the version, or not version, I'll set the REST property. So this is for the REST client. I'll set the version to version 10. And I'll go ahead and reference client.rest, and I'll set the token to a variable that I will define called bot underscore token. So I'm going to go up top here, and I'll define that variable like this. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do instead of just referencing or referencing process.env.bot token, since the name of this property is the same as the name of the variable that I'm defining, I can actually just destructure this from the process.env object, because this is just an object, right, that has all of your environment variables mapped to key value pairs. And I'll also destructure the app ID and the guild ID as well, because we'll need that to register our slash commands. Okay, just make sure that they are the same exact name. Okay, now what I'll do is I'll go ahead and create an async function, and I'll call it main. And this is just basically going to be like a bootstrap function that will be invoked whenever you execute the index.js script. Okay, so I'll go ahead and do a try catch, because you always want to make sure you are handling errors that could possibly be thrown by your application. And what we'll do is we will go ahead and I'll just log the bot in first. That's kind of like one of the things that we'll need to do. So let me pass in the bot token like that. Okay, but before we log the bot in, we do need to register all of our slash commands. So we will go ahead and do await client.rest. And to register slash commands, you're going to use the put method, and you're going to get the route for the endpoint to register your application guild commands. So we can reference routes, which is imported up top here that we did earlier. We imported that earlier. And then you're going to go ahead and get the application guild commands. So you're going to call that function, pass in the app ID, the application ID. So I have that imported up top here or destructured up top there from process.env. And then pass in the guild ID. And then that's going to be this is going to format a URL for you. So it'll get so it'll call the correct Discord endpoint to register the application guild commands. And the second parameter is just going to be an object, and it's going to take in a request body, which is just going to be an array of all of our application commands in JSON format. So we will revisit this array later, because we are not going to manually write out all of our slash commands inside this array like we did in our previous tutorials. The whole point of this command handler is to do everything dynamically. So we'll have a folder called commands. Okay, so I'll create a new folder and I'll call this commands. You can actually call this whatever you want, actually, but I'll just call it commands for now. We'll only worry about slash commands first. Later on, I'll create follow-up videos to show you how you can handle, button interactions and all the other stuff. Okay, but what we want to do is we want to have this subfolder in our source folder called commands. Okay, and this commands folder is going to have all of our slash commands, right? So let's say, for example, I'll have a slash command called stats to get, server stats. I'll have one or bot stats, or whatever stats you want. I'll have a whois command, right, to get information about a guild member. I can also have subfolders as well. Let's say if I want to group together my files, right, I can do that as well. So we'll have like, moderation commands, we'll have miscellaneous commands, right? Etc., etc., right? And the whole purpose of this is to have all of your slash command logic implemented in its own file, making it more modular in your code base, right? Because if we didn't do this, we would need to do everything inside the event handler for interaction create, the event handler function, right? And it's going to look really messy when you have so many commands to handle, okay? So the next thing that we are going to need to do is we are going to need to first create like a base class for our slash commands, and I'll show you how this is going to work. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll create a new folder and I'll call this utils, and you don't need to use classes. So for those who are familiar with command handlers, some of you may have used objects before. So in some tutorials, they tend to use objects, and what they'll do is they'll have a module that exports, and that'll just basically export an object, and they'll have properties like name, so that'll be the name of the command, right? It'll have like, alias. Well, with slash commands, I don't think there are any aliases for slash commands, so we don't even need to worry about that. But the important part is it has the name property, which is the name of the command, and then it has this function, and typically it's called run, or you can call it execute, okay? But I call it run. And what happens is this object, right, is later on going to, or I shouldn't say this object, this file that exports this object will be dynamically imported later on in our code, and it's going to reference the name property, which is stats. And what's going to happen is it's going to take that name and it's going to map that name to the method that is going to execute, which is this run method. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and explain this a little bit. So most of you should be familiar with what a map data type is in JavaScript or in programming in general, right? A map is basically just a high-level data structure that has key value pairs. Okay, so for example, you'll have the key stats, which is our command name, and this is just going to map to a function, okay, that can be called later on. That's pretty much all. Well, it doesn't have to be a function, but you get the idea. It's a key value pair. In our situation, we will need to define a map that will map the name of the command to the instance, because we're going to be using classes. We're not going to be using objects. We will be using classes. Okay, it's going to map it to the instance, which we can then later on do whatever we want with it. And one of the things that we will do is call the run method. Okay. But I know right now it's kind of like a little bit abstract, but don't worry, as we are progressing with the tutorial, it'll make a lot more sense. But hopefully right now you kind of get the idea of how this is going to work. Okay, so before we do anything else, because we are going to be using classes, I'll go ahead and create a new file, and I'll just call this base/command.js. Okay, and what I'll do is I'll create a class called base/command. And you don't have to do it this way, but I tend to like to be very organized and have like actual like contracts defined in my code. In JavaScript, there aren't any. There's no such thing as interfaces or abstract classes, so it is a little bit loose in JavaScript. But when you look at the TypeScript tutorial, it'll be a lot more better. Okay, but what we want to do is we want to create this this base command class that we will later on extend from the other classes. Okay, so that way all of our other /command classes that we will implement for, the stats command, whois command, all of those will be instances of base/command. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll set up a constructor, and this constructor is just going to take in a name, and we'll do this _name equals name. So I guess this is pretty much all we'll do. I can't really like define like abstract methods. That's not a thing in JavaScript. But for now, this should be okay. Base/command. The whole purpose is ensuring that all of the other command classes will extend this command, so that way they all are instances of base/command. Okay, because they extend base/command. So we'll just only have a name property. Okay, so we'll go into the whois command and we'll do this. So let's do module exports equals class who is slash command extends base slash command. And we will need to import that from, let me see. So this is, oh wait, I forgot we are not using ES module, so we cannot do export module that exports. There we go. So let's do const base slash command equals require utils base slash command. Okay, so we have imported this and we have extended that. So now in the constructor, I can just go ahead and call the superclasses constructor, which is this constructor over here. And remember, it takes in a name. Okay, and I'll also define a getter for this class, so that way we can actually get the name of the command. So I'll just pass in who is as a string, just like that. Okay, and of course this will be hard coded. And then so I'll show you right now. If I were to go ahead and create an instance of who is slash command, right, I can then reference the name getter, and that will give me the name of who is. So let me show you how this works. So, and again, I'm just going to test everything as we go, because I want to make sure you all are just understanding what we're doing. So that way we're not writing too much code and you're just going to end up being lost with what's going on. Okay, so I'll console log new who is slash command. So I'll instantiate that. Let's go ahead and run our code, because we haven't even done anything yet. So you'll see that right over here, the instance was created, and you'll see that it has this property called underscore name. But we can go ahead and use the name getter like that. And if I save, it'll give me the name. And remember, who is slash command extends base slash command. So it inherits all of its properties, all of its methods. Okay, so that's how we're able to use the getter on who is slash command. A little bit of an object-oriented programming knowledge. Hopefully you all understand that. Anyways, let's continue. So it doesn't make sense for us to define the method that is going to be executed inside the base slash command class, right? Because each method is going to have its own implementation. That's why I'm saying abstract classes will be a lot better, because then we can have abstract methods that we can then force the class to implement it. But it's fine though. But just watch this. So each class is going to have this run method, okay? And every single run method will take in two arguments. It will take in the client and it will take in the interaction object. So again, if you've used command handlers before, if you've built them before, it's the same exact, it's almost the same exact thing with the old command handlers, where you listen to the message create event and you took in three arguments. You took in the client instance, you took in the message object, and you took in arguments, which was always an array. Or typically it was an array, right? In our case, we are just only going to take in the client and the interaction object, okay? And what I'll do is I'll just call interaction.reply, and I'll just reply with some content who is slash command. We're not going to implement any extreme logic. We'll just go ahead and just reply with some text, okay? So now every single slash command is going to follow this structure, okay? At least for just regular chat input commands, okay? We're not going to worry about subcommands right now or buttons, okay? We'll only worry about chat input commands. So let's copy this. Let's go into stats.js. Let's paste this in. Let's change everything up. So let's call this stats slash command. Change this to stats, and then change this to stats. Okay? And let's go ahead and do the same thing for moderation. So I'll just create something like a mute command. Like that. So hopefully you get the idea of what we're doing. And we'll go ahead and do one more for misc. So let's just do, so for miscellaneous command, we'll just do something like a roll dice command. Okay. Okay, cool. So now we have all of our commands inside the commands folder. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to get all of these files in this commands folder. We need to take each file, we need to import it dynamically. We need to create an instance of these classes after we import them dynamically, right? And then we need to map the name of the command to the instance itself. Now, I know this might sound a little bit confusing and weird if it's your first time doing it, but let me explain why we are doing this. Okay, so when we map the name of the command to the instance itself, we're going to map it and then save it into memory, right? Specifically, we're going to save it into a collection, a Discord collection. And the Discord collection is just a it's just a subclass of the JavaScript, the ES6 map data structure, right? It just provides you with a bunch of additional methods and properties that you can use to do things that the default map class does not have, right? So we're going to basically save everything inside the collection data structure, and whenever we run our slash command, let's say if we were to run the stats slash command, right, we would need to get the actual instance from that data structure, from the collection data structure, right? And then we would get the instance and we would call the run method. And so whenever we use the stats command, it's going to run the correct method for the stats slash command. Okay. So what I'll do right now is we'll go ahead and register all of the commands from the file, and we'll load it up into memory. And I'll show you how this is going to work. But keep in mind that I'm going to be reusing some code that I wrote for a library that I had a while ago. It's called Slappy. For some of you may have used it before. Because I don't want to write everything from scratch, because I just think it's unnecessary. But I'm going to just reuse that, and I'm going to explain to you what's going on, so at least you understand what exactly is going on. Okay, so let me go ahead and grab that code real quick, and then I'll show you what we're going to need to do. So inside utils, I'll create a file called registry.js, and I'll paste this in here. And a lot of this code will look very similar if you have worked with command handlers before. Okay, so allow me to explain what this code does. So first we import the path module, okay, and then we import the fs promises library. This is the file system API that's built in with Node.js, okay, and it basically allows you to read files, delete files, create files, etc., okay. We have a function called register commands. It takes in two arguments. It takes in client, which is the Discord client instance, and then it takes in dir, which is just a string, and that's just going to be the directory, which is going to be the commands directory that we'll need to pass in. Okay. Inside the function, we have two variables that are defined. We have file path and files. File path is just going to be the path to the directory that we want to read. So we're calling path.join, and we're joining the dir name. So this is a global variable. Okay, and that'll basically give you the current directories, and we're joining it with dir. Okay, so whatever value we're passing in, which is going to be the commands folder. And then what's happening here is we're calling fs.readdir, and all this does is it just reads the directory. So in our case, it will be reading the commands directory, and it's just going to give you an array of files. Okay, you can see that the return type is going to be an array of, it's going to be a string array, though for some reason it doesn't want to mention that over here. I guess there's different types of return types, but typically it's just going to be an array. Okay, and you can see over here we have a for loop, okay, for const file of files, and what happens here is it just goes through every single file that was read inside that directory. Okay, now here's the next part that you need to understand, is that inside our directory, right, we can have other directories. So what we need to ensure we do is we need to check to see if the file that we're reading is in fact a directory. To do that, we call fs.lstat, and then we just pass in the file that we want to actually read, right? So let me show you it like this, right? So the first time we call register commands, dir will be dot dot slash commands. And the value of dir name will actually be the root directory slash source slash utils. And the reason why is because register commands is inside the utils folder. So we need to actually pass in dot dot slash commands to go out one directory. So when we go out utils by one, we'll be in the source folder, and then we'll step into the commands folder. So in the end, the whole directory will look like this. Okay, so we have the root dir and then slash source slash commands. So what happens is when we read the commands folder, it'll have 4 files. It will have 2 of them will be directories, and 2 of them will just be regular JavaScript files. Okay, so what happens here is we're going to take the first file, and I'll also console log it too, so you can see the value of it. Okay, it's just going to be a string, and what's going to happen is we're just going to call lstat on to the path of the file. So what we're doing here is we're calling path.join file path. Okay, so file path is already root dir slash source slash commands. Okay, we're joining that directory with the name of the file. So let's say, for example, if the name of the file is misc, which is a directory, right? This value over here will just end up being slash source slash commands slash misc. Okay, and so what happens here is this will give you a stats type, which you can then call the isDirectory method. So this will check if the file is a directory. So if the first file is misc, right, stat.isDirectory will return true because misc is in fact a directory. If it is a directory, we're going to recursively call the register commands function. The reason why we're doing this is because you want to make sure that you hit every single subdirectory, because inside the misc folder, you might also have another subfolder. Inside that subfolder, you might have another subfolder. So the whole idea is that we are recursively reading through every single file until there are no more directories inside the folder. Okay, so it's just basically going to keep reading the misc directory. If that misc folder or directory has another folder, right? I'm going to use folder and directory interchangeably. So if the misc folder has another folder, okay, it's going to call register commands, okay? And it's going to pass in the client instance, and it's just going to pass in path.join. It's going to take the value of dir, which the first time it was commands, right? And it's going to join it with the name of the file. So dir will now be dot dot slash commands slash misc, right? And then it's going to go ahead and take the dir name variable, join together with the new value of dir. So that's the second time it was called. Again, I know all of this is trippy, but this is why, like I said, don't worry about this. All the code will be in the description, but I'm only explaining for those who are interested to know what's going on, right? But if you don't care about what's going on and you just want to get it to work, just copy this code. It will be in the description. Don't worry, okay? But when register commands is called the second time, right, recursively, the value of dir will be dot dot slash commands slash misc, right? Misc will have only one file. So when we loop through this files array, because again, it does the same exact thing, right? It's going to call path.join. It's going to read that directory, right? It's going to go ahead and loop through all the files in the array, or all the name of the files, right? And we're going to go ahead and check if that file is a directory. So in our case, we're checking if rolled dice is directory. It's not. So since rolled dice is not a directory, it's going to go ahead and execute this if statement right over here. Okay, so it'll check if the file ends with .js, so that'll just ensure that the file is a JavaScript file, and then it's just going to do a dynamic import right over here. It's going to import that rolled dice module. Okay, so when you import it, since this is a default import, right? Well, actually, I shouldn't say default because that's really more of a ES module thing. But since this import will just basically be a class, right? We can just easily create an instance of that right over here. So you can see over here, I'm dynamically importing it, assigning that to command, and then we can just create an instance of that command. Okay, and then what happens is we reference client./commands. So this property does not exist by default. We'll need to actually instantiate client./commands later on in the main function. Don't worry about that right now, but this will basically be the Discord collection, or it could be a map, whichever one you choose to use. But it will just basically be a collection, and then we can call the set method, and we can set the name of the command as the key. And remember, this name is the getter, right? That comes from the base / command right over here. And we're basically mapping the name of the command to the instance that we just created. So then later on, we can reference this / commands collection and call .get on it, pass in the key, which is the command name, and that'll retrieve us the instance for that command. Okay. But yeah, I know all this is really kind of weird, but like I said, I'm only explaining this for those who are interested and want to know what's going on. But you don't have to worry so much about this. All the code will be in the description, so you can just copy everything here and it will work just fine. Okay. So hopefully all of this made sense. Okay. So it'll register that JavaScript file by importing it dynamically, importing the JavaScript class dynamically, setting the key, mapping it to the instance of that imported class. And then once that's done, what will happen is it will go ahead and go to the next file. So there's no more files anymore inside MISC. So if you understand recursion, what happens after you recursively call a function is it'll just basically return back to where it was originally called, and it'll just continue on with the rest of the logic. So in our case, since MISC was a directory, right, and we called register commands for that directory, right over here, we run out of files. Okay, so once this is done, it'll just go back to register commands. Okay, and then after register commands is finished, it will just go ahead and proceed with this logic over here. Okay, we know that MISC is not a JavaScript file, so it will just not execute this, and then it'll go on to the next file. So it'll go on to moderation. Okay, and it'll do the same exact thing. So yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to this function. But again, don't worry so much about it. Just understand that it does a bunch of magic for you that you don't have to worry about. Okay, but it is a good exercise to actually learn what recursion is, and you'll understand this function a lot better once you understand recursion. But let's not waste too much time on this. Let's just go ahead and continue. So what I'll do is I'll first import this register commands function into my code. So let me just remove this import up top here for the whois command, and let me remove this console log. So we'll import from /utils/registry. And we want to import that register commands function. And what I'll do, so before we actually call client.rest.put, let me comment this out. We'll need to register the commands first. So before we can even register the commands, we first need to define the /commands property. You can define this however you want. I'll just do client./commands equals and then new collection. So this is a class, or this is the collection class that is imported from the Discord.js module. So you need to make sure you import that up top there, like this. Okay, and then later on you'll be able to reference /commands property on the client object, and you can call set or get. Okay, and again, if you don't want to use collection, if you want to use map instead, you can also do that. It's up to you. Okay, cool. So now we can then call register commands, pass in the client, and then pass in the directory. We will need to pass in the value /commands. And the whole reason why is because since the register function is inside the utils folder, the dir name value is going to include that utils subfolder. Okay, so that's why you need to do /commands. So it'll go out one directory into the source folder, and it'll step into the commands folder. If you don't pass in /commands, you're going to be in the wrong directory. Okay, and this is an asynchronous function, so we do need to make sure we await register commands, as well as when we recursively call it, we do need to make sure we also await that as well. Otherwise, you're going to run into an issue where sometimes all of your commands will register, sometimes only partially they will register, right? Like, let's say, for example, if you have 5 commands, sometimes only 3 of them will register, sometimes 4. And the reason why is because everything is happening asynchronously. If you're not awaiting it, it's not going to wait for everything to finish, and you're going to end up having issues. So just make sure you await everything that is asynchronous. Okay? That is important. And after we register commands, I will go ahead and show you what the value of client./commands will look like. Okay, so let's go ahead and run our code because we did a lot of stuff. Let's see what's going on. Let's see what's going on over here. It says cannot find module utils slash base slash command. What is going on over here? Let's see. Something's going on. I think it's complaining because, let's see. Okay, so you can see that it is in fact working. File, cannot find module utils base slash command. I think it's complaining about, let's see. Well, you know what I think the problem here is? I have two subfolders where I have commands inside there, or the classes inside there. So since we're inside a subfolder, we do need to actually do ... slash. Yeah, I think that's the problem over there. Yep, that's the problem. Because in these folders, we only had to go out once, go into utils, right? But since we are in a subfolder, we need to go out twice. So let's fix that. So ... slash, and then there we go. That should fix that issue. Cool. So let me go back into the registry.js file. Let me also do this. I want to go ahead and rerun everything. So let's do that. There we go. No errors. But I want you to look at the logs. So you can see over here, it logs file misc. That's the folder. So you can see that when we run through everything, the first file that we are taking care of is the misc folder. As you can see over here, it is logging misc, right? That is being logged over here. And then, since it's a subdirectory, it's going to recursively call register commands. And you'll see that the next file that is being logged is rolled dice. Okay? And then you'll see over here, it will say registering rolled dice. Once that is done, there are no more files inside the subdirectory misc. So it will just go to the next file, which is going to be moderation, right? So you can see file moderation. There's only one file in there, mute.js. It's going to register that. And then since there are no more files inside moderation, it'll just go to the next file. Okay? And then it'll go ahead and read stats and then who is. As you can see, those two files are being read. Okay? And then what happens is it will go ahead and dynamically import those files, and those files are just classes. We instantiate those classes like this, okay? And then we just basically reference client./commands.set, take the instance, get the name, okay? And then we just map the name to the command instance itself. And that's why in the logs, you'll see it says registering roll dice, registering mute, registering stats, registering who is. And we log the value of client./commands. And you'll see right over here, we have a collection. The size is 4 because we only have 4 items in here. And you'll see that roll dice maps to roll dice/command. Okay. Mute maps to mute/command. And every other command maps to its own /command. Okay, so it is working. Okay, so now the next question that you're probably wondering is, what is the whole purpose of this collection? Why did we just do this? Well, let me show you. So before I can show you, let's go ahead and do one more thing, because we actually did not do this yet. Okay, each class is going to have a method, and again, this is how I'm going to do this. You can do it however you want. Each class is going to have a method, and we're going to call this method, let me see. I will call this to JSON. Well, actually, I'm not going to call it to JSON. I'll call it get /command JSON. Okay? And what we'll do is we will return an instance of /command builder .toJSON. We'll need to import this class up top here. So let's do that. Let's import /command builder, and that comes from the Discord.js package. So remember, /command builder has this method called toJSON, and that'll just basically return to you a JSON object that you can then pass to the Discord API. But before we call to JSON, we'll need to call set name. So we'll set the name to this dot name, okay, which will be who is, and we'll set the description to whatever it is that we want. So I'll just say who is command, and then we'll call to JSON. And of course, you can do everything else here. You can add channel option. You can set the permissions. You can do whatever you want here. The whole purpose of this method is that every class will have it, and you'll need this method to get the actual JSON of the slash command that you can then pass to the Discord API to actually register your slash command. So this is very important. Okay. So let's just go ahead and copy this for every single method. Stats command, mute command, roll dice command. Okay, cool. So now that we have this method in every single class, what we'll do next is this. So we'll go into our index.js file inside the main function, and we need to actually register our slash commands to the Discord API. Because the only thing that we did so far was we only took the name of the command and we mapped it to its instance, right? That doesn't really do anything yet, right? We need to also register the slash command to Discord API as well. So to do this, well, the question is, well, how do we do this, right? Well, we called client.rest.put, right? We have the route, we have the endpoint that we're calling, and then we have this request body, which is just expecting an array of all of the JSON formatted slash commands. But how do we actually get all of these JSON formatted slash commands? Well, here's how I'm going to do this. Okay. So what we can do is we can first declare a variable, and I'll call this, let's do this const, I'll call this slash commands JSON equals, and we're going to reference client.slash-commands. So we know that this is a collection, okay? And Discord collections have a method called .map. So this is why you'd actually want to use a collection, because the regular ES6 map data structure does not actually have this map function, okay? So we're going to go ahead and call .map. And if you don't know what this method does, it basically just goes through the entire collection, and you can apply a transformation function on the item that is currently being processed in the map, right? And you can transform that item into whatever you want, and it'll return every single item transformed into a new array, right? So we're basically going to go through every single slash command, okay? And the value itself is just going to be the instance, right? So I'll just call this CMD, okay? And then we'll do, so remember, this is the instance, because remember our slash commands collection maps all the command names to the actual command instance, which are these classes over here, okay? So we're going to take the instance, and we're going to go ahead and call the get slash command JSON method that we just implemented just now. So what was it called again? Wait, I forgot. Get slash command JSON. There we go. Get slash command JSON. And so this will return this object over here. And it'll do this for every single item in the map, and it'll return it into an array. So it doesn't actually modify the original map. So this should actually return as an array, I believe, not a collection. But we'll console log slash commands JSON, and let me show you what just happened. Okay, what's going on here? Slash command builder is not defined. Let's see. Oh, did I forget to import this? Yes, I did. I only imported it in one file. Silly me. Okay, let's go ahead and try this again. Here we go. And so we have our collection, and now we have an array, and the array is going to give you all of your slash commands in JSON format, which can then be sent to the Discord API. Okay, So that is how you can get that array. And then all we need to do is just take this variable and just pass that as the value for the request body. So for the body property, we can just assign the slash commands JSON as the value for that. Okay, and then this will go ahead and call the API and register your slash commands. So what I'll do is I will go ahead and do this. I'll declare a variable called registered slash commands, and I'll go ahead and call the same exact endpoint, but with a get request like this. So routes the application guild commands, app ID, guild ID as our two arguments. Only difference is that this is a get request, not a put. So this is going to allow you to get all of the commands that are registered for the guild. So let me console log registered slash commands. Okay, and let me show you what happens. So let's reset everything, or not reset, but let's restart our bot. And there you go. You can see that we have the returned value from the Discord API. We have all 4 of our slash commands registered. They have an ID, application ID, version, guild ID, as you can see all over here. Okay, so now that we have registered our slash commands to the Discord API, and we've also created individual files for each slash command, and then had those had the command names mapped to those instances, right, that were imported from those files that we created. What do we do next? Okay, how do we put everything together now? So what we're going to do is we're going to need to handle each slash command dynamically. And to do that, we're going to go ahead and handle the interaction create event. And this will go ahead and take in a callback function, which is going to take in an interaction object. Okay. And then again, we're only working with slash commands for this video. In other videos, I'll show you how we can handle this for other types of interactions, such as buttons, drop-down menus, modules, etc. So what we'll do is we'll check to see if the interaction is a chat input command. And if it is, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get the command name from the interaction object. So remember, interaction has the command name property for the chat input command interaction. We're going to destructure that command name as a variable from the interaction object. And what we'll do is this. I'll declare a variable called cmd. We're going to go ahead and reference client.slash-commands. Remember, this is a collection, so we can call .get. We want to pass in the key. And remember, the key was the command name, the slash command name, as you can see right over here. Okay, so we're going to pass in command name, and what we'll do is we'll go ahead and use an if condition. If command, so if this value is truthy, and what that basically means is that if there's an actual key value pair with the command name of the slash command that we just issued, then what we'll do is we'll take command, and we know that every single key is going to map to base slash command, okay? And every single instance is going to have this run function, this run method. So we'll go ahead and call command.run, and we'll pass in the client and the interaction object like this. Okay? Now, if for whatever reason, if we call .get passing the command name and it returns a falsy value, basically null or undefined, what that means is that you try to use a slash command, but in your code, in the collection, there is no key value pair for that slash command. And that could happen, and I'll show you how that could happen. But let me just write an else case, and we'll just say interaction.reply. Whoops. And we'll just say content, and we'll just say slash. This command has no run method. Okay, so let's go ahead and test this out. So what I'll do is I will restart my bot. Let's wait for that. Do we have a ready event being listened to? I don't think we do. Okay, but our bot should be online though, so that's fine. Let's go into our server and let's do slash, and let's try using our commands. So you'll see that when I use the mute command, you'll see that it says mute slash command, and this is coming from the run function over here, right? Mute slash command. Okay, let's do slash roll dice. Good, it's working. Let's do slash stats, and then let's do who is. Okay, so it's working. Now let me go ahead and show you a situation where you will have a slash command, but there's no logic. There's no like instance for that slash command. So essentially just have a slash command that has no handler or no logic that could be used to execute it. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead in the main function inside index.js and inside slash commands JSON. Well, not inside here, but this is an array, right? I'm going to go ahead and pass in this value destructured inside a new array. So I'm just going to unpack all of the values of slash commands JSON into a new array, and then I'll just go ahead and I'll just create a custom slash command. I'm not going to use a slash command builder because I'm just going to do this just for testing purposes, but I'll just pass in I guess an object, and I'll do name, test, cmd, description, test command, hello world, and hopefully this should be fine. I don't think I need to specify the type for this command, but it'll complain if okay, there we go. So you can see that it did not complain about anything, which is good. And you can see that my command is registered. So this is the data that is returned from the Discord API. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, perfect. And then we also have a collection of 4. So you can see that our collection does not have the test command slash command. Okay, and obviously it doesn't have it because we don't have a file for test command. So watch what happens if I go into my server and if I try to do slash test command. It's going to tell you this command has no run method, and it shouldn't be a surprise, right? Because we do not have a file for that slash command. Okay, since we don't, that key value pair is not going to exist in the slash commands collection, okay, that we defined earlier. And so when we try to retrieve that instance by its command name, the return value is going to be null or undefined, right? Which means that there is no instance mapped to it, which means we can't really do anything with that. But of course, as long as you register your slash commands the way that you see it in this video, you should be fine. But I'm just showing you a situation where this could happen. Okay, but yeah, that is pretty much all there is really to it when it comes to just slash commands. Okay, now things could get a little bit trickier if you are working with sub commands. So I'll show you a quick example. So let's say I'll create a folder and I'll just call this let's see, what do I want to call this? Let's call this fun. You know, I don't know, whatever you want to call this, fun commands, right? And we'll just call this command party command, party.js. And I'll just copy and paste literally everything here into the party.js file. And I'll just call this party slash command. And we can register this as a sub command. So what I'll do is this. Okay. I'll go ahead and call add sub command, and then I'll just call this sub command. So this is the callback function, and we do need to add, or not add, but like we do need to set the name of the sub command, and I'll just call this. So let's say party start. Set description starts the party. Okay, and of course for the sub command you can add options or choices if you need to for those options, right? We'll just leave it like this for now. You can also add more subcommands too. So I think to do that, you would need to, you would need to do this outside of the add subcommand call. So we have to do add subcommand, and I'll just do this. I'll create another subcommand, and I'll just call it end for ending the party. Okay. So let's go ahead and do this. So let's save. Let's restart our bot. And you'll see that over here that I have my party command being registered. And if I go into my server, I do slash party, I have party start, party end. Okay, now of course this is going to be a little bit difficult. Not difficult, but like what you would need to do is you need to handle the options for the subcommand, right? Because right now, when you execute either one of these commands, party start or party end, it's going to just execute this run method, and it's going to do the same thing. So I'll show you how we can handle this in a later video. Basically, it just kind of like creates an extra condition, or we will create an extra condition to check what the subcommand is. So we'll need to modify a couple things, but that'll be for a later video. Okay, but hopefully you are aware of this situation right now, so that way you can kind of like brainstorm ideas of how you could handle it. But I'll show you how we can do this in a later video, because we're kind of out of time right now. But yeah, that is pretty much it when it comes to slash commands. That is the general gist of it. Hopefully you all learn a new thing or two. But don't worry, all of the code will be in a GitHub repository. I'll leave a link down below, so you can just use that as a reference. And you can also just copy this registry.js file. So don't worry about that. But yeah, anyways, so that is going to be pretty much it for this episode for handling chat input commands for application commands. In the next couple of episodes, I'll show you how you can do other stuff, such as handling buttons, handling modal submissions, and a bunch of other things. So that's going to be pretty much it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. Peace out.